Welcome to the Midnight Musings Podcast. Today I have with us a very special guest. Mariah, please introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do?
I'm Mariah. I have a coaching company, and I do a lot, really. I guess you'll have to find out, but I do a lot of different things, whatever really I'm good at.
Yeah, you know what? I gotta say that's true, and I also do a lot because we ran into each other at like the most random of events ever. I think it was like a golfing event.
Yeah, it was, what do they call that?
Live golf, I
Yeah,
think.
live
Yeah.
golf.
And I don't even follow golf, but I was just like, all right, cool. So we stay connected. Talked about possibly doing a podcast, and here we are. So awesome. Thanks for jumping on. So the nature of this podcast is we get into like pretty much anything. So like controversial topics. I had someone talk about aliens one time. I had someone talk about paranormal activity. Today, I want to know a little bit about your work and your business itself, because it delves into things that I feel like a lot of people aren't necessarily off the top of their head like comfortable talking with, but I think it's important for them to assess themselves a little bit. So yeah, tell me in a nutshell, what do you do?
Well, on social media, I talk a lot about trauma, and I talk a lot about different like holistic ways to heal things. I've studied a lot on nutrition, different foods, and how they correlate with the body, the mind. I'm not really like licensed, or I didn't go to school for a lot of these things, just life coaching, but I have a lot of knowledge from doctors, from watching podcasts from them, so it's not just like his stuff coming out of my brain.
It's not bro science either. Okay, yeah. I feel it. Yeah, but I think that's something to be like so respected, because you have a passion for your actual practice and you look into it and you continuously research about it. Because I come from a similar industry too. No marketing degree here, yet six-figure business, has been running it for years. And so like I think it's important for listeners to understand this. Like if you are a strictly like, I hate to like put us in a box, but if you're like a strictly like Western medicine type of person, like listen to this podcast a little bit and like let some of what you're gonna learn, actually hit your spirit a little bit, and be open to that, because if we strictly go off of what Western doctors and medicine have taught us, guess what? We're gonna be kind of unhealthy. I myself don't really trust a lot of the big pharma and all that stuff. So yeah, why this? Why did you start doing it?
The why. The big question why. I got sick. Well, I grew up around, I had sick grandparents.
Okay.
My grandpa was really sick, so I kind of grew up with knowledge of the medical field and kind of seen all of its flaws from the very, start of my life.
Right.
And then when I got older, I got sick, and it was really random. Their reasoning behind why I was sick, it never really clicked with me, and I've researched it a lot, and it's never made sense. So the first sickness I got was eclampsia, which was a rare symptom instead of pre-eclampsia. I got it after I had my first child, and it's essentially high blood pressure. It just continues to go up.
Oh, wow.
The only way that they treat it is like a ton of magnesium, and it gives you seizures and whatnot. So that had happened.
I got magnesium in here, just in case.
And then after that, I got endocarditis, which is like a heart infection.
Okay.
And the cause is pretty much unknown, is what they told me, which doesn't make sense. So after that, I got really deep into it because I wanted to understand a lot.
So this was something personal for you. It wasn't just like someone grows up and it's like, hey, I want to be a nurse. Why do you want to be a nurse? Because it makes a lot of money. I'm like, cool. That's like the most shallow thing you can tell me. Do you? That's fine. But but I love that.
It was never about the money. Never. So, I started researching things on my own as far as like my own health. That's kind of when I got into spirituality pretty heavily too. Because I realized a lot of it correlates. Everything kind of all connects. So yeah,
I love that. You know what? Talk to me about that a little bit, because I feel, I have like the most random, I hate to say diverse, but we do have like a really diverse audience. And it's like anywhere from, people that are Christian, that are atheists, that are agnostic, that don't know what they believe. They're, very much in like a discovery phase. So like when people hear the word like I'm spiritual, I feel like there's like this idea of like, it's almost like question mark. It's like, what do you mean by that?
Right.
So yeah, in your own words and your experience, like, what does that mean to you? Are you like, do you feel that you're tied to a religion, or do you take some aspects of it, or is it just something totally unique?
It's really all connected, and a lot of people don't like to hear that, especially people who kind of sit within religion only.
Right.
They don't believe that at all. And I've studied a few different kind of religions and different belief systems. Spirituality to me is just a connection with source, whatever you consider the higher power to be. Everybody has a different story, but main line is there's always one, and then we all call it something else. So, that's pretty much it. Like, I believe in a lot of different things. Like, I'm an ominous.
Okay.
So I have, like, respect and belief in all of the things. Just little pieces here and there from different things, because it's all just really tied together.
I love that. Yeah. You know, I feel very much in a similar kind of space. I think that, like, every religion, at least, you know, the way I see, like, God or, like, a being for me is, like, this being loves his children no matter what. And I think it'd be completely unfair for a being to create all these creatures and be like, you know what? All of you have, like, this fake knowledge, and, like, only this one religion has the truth. I feel like, to a degree, everyone gets a piece of the puzzle, and it's up to us in the world of life to, like, figure out which of those puzzles are absolute truth and which of those puzzles are just, you know, are human fun and tradition and, you know, whatever it is. So that's awesome.
I think when people try to connect with, let's just go with God, because it's usually the one that everybody names.
God, call him whatever you want.
If people just go straight to church, right? That would be like a religious stance of how to get closer to God. But in my stance and my perspective in life and how I view it, I feel the closer you get within yourself and the deeper you go within yourself and learn about who you really are as a soul, the closer you are to God. And it's almost kind of coming from, like, the closer you can get to spirituality, the closer you are to that other realm that we talk about. Like, I wouldn't just say demon, but on the other side where, you know, heaven, hell, all that exists, that's basically getting closer to that is getting closer to God.
Yeah, and it involves being active, and it involves, like, looking within yourself.
Yeah.
And I feel like people totally miss the picture, you know, when it comes to, like modern day, you know, call it what you want. I'll pick on Christianity because I am a sect of Christianity in a way. But, like, you know, you go to your average churchgoer and they think that the way of, like, the epitome of, like, how to be the best church-going person is to, like, just stay in church and that's it, and maybe throw in some money for charity and that's all.
Right.
But it's like, well, I mean, when you read about all these, like, prophetic people, whether it's just historical prophetic people or people that you actually believe are, like, divinely helped prophets or whatever, they do a lot of a couple things. They're always out traveling, like, in the wilderness, and they're searching within themselves.
Right.
Like, you read about these prophets, these are, like, the most emo prophets you've ever seen. They're like, yeah, and I was, like, in deep sorrow and misery, and I was, like, looking for light and stuff. And it's like, cool. Why aren't we doing a lot of, like, light seeking and stuff?
Well, when we go to, like, if we deepen it a little bit, the Bible, every Bible is different. It's different even from way, way back.
Totally,
and it's so far back that even that is conflicting for me, because I'm like, how much of that is true?
Right.
You know, we don't really know. I know there's a lot of people that want to move based off faith, but I think that's where the whole internalizing it comes from. Like, that's really what the faith should be, not off of a physical object.
Right.
So I don't have any issue with, like, a religion or anybody's beliefs at all. It's just the attachment to physical things and settings and environments. Like, I have to be going to church every Sunday, and I have to read my Bible 1 to 2 times every night.
You got to memorize the verses too.
Totally. Like, if you don't do that, you know, you're going to hell. You can try to repent, but you're still probably going to hell. Like, I don't like that, because I feel like that puts a negative light around God.
Oh, yeah, and it totally hurts a lot of people. You know, I grew up in a very church-based... I wouldn't say my home was a church-centered home, but we had a faith that we would go to.
Right.
And I feel that as a child growing up and being kind of a little bit alternative, like, I went through the emo phase, I had the scene phase, I had the hair and everything, but it's like I never felt so judged until I would go in there on a Sunday morning and I would service... You know, in the church, I had a calling, which is basically, you know, the church says, hey, you're going to do this? Okay, cool. So for for us teens, it was going to serve the sacrament, or the bread and water and stuff. And like the dirty looks I would get from like all these boomers and stuff, they're supposed to be all holy and enlightened beings going to church. I'm like, geez, all I got is long hair, y'all. Like, I'm here volunteering as a service, giving you yeah, what you believe is like your nourishing thing to go closer to God. And I'm getting all this hate, and I'm like, this cannot be healthy.
Yeah. I grew up Mormon.
Yeah.
Not in a very like Mormon-like household though.
Yeah.
It's kind of similar. Very toxic, but then we would
toxic,
go on
but
Sunday.
you pretend that it's not.
Sundays was, we're not talking about no issues that we have at home. You better dress good.
Yeah.
Be on your best behavior, and I'm like, this is so fake. Like,
I had such a bad upbringing. So yeah, plot twist. Yeah, I also grew up in an LDS home. I still identify with it to a degree, but I wouldn't say that I'm not your trad Mormon in a way.
Right.
Like not like, and I love, and I have a lot of friends in Utah, and I think they're great, but the way that like the bubble identity trickles into people, it's not how it works. So I'm very much glad that I didn't have that landlock on me, and I was allowed to grow up with, make mistakes, and, learn about myself rather than like, oh, you can't do that. We're not allowed to do that. And like grow up that way your whole life.
See, that box is what makes us chaotic when we're older.
And you got to release that chaos.
You have to eventually experience. So the more they kind of shelter you, it's like with parents. The more you shelter them, the more they're going to rebel.
Right. I think it's so ironic whenever I hear about like rebellious children and stuff. Ironically, it's always like, oh, it's the pastor's daughter. Oh, it's this. And I'm like, geez.
The one that couldn't do anything or say anything.
Right? And I'm supposed to take your advice. You're supposed to be like the person to like, absolve us of sins or whatever.
And some of these people in church are good though. But
yeah, absolutely.
I've walked into so many different ones looking for the same kind of experience.
Yeah.
That everybody talked about. Yeah. That was so deeply in religion. And I'm like, it's not anywhere. Like, in here, I don't fit here. This is like a box, and I just don't happen to fit in it. So
yeah, I feel like based on location, based on this stuff, it's like it's all BS. Like and like that's where it's like, I am. So I want to get your opinion on some other like talking about like spiritual side stuff, because I know that like within like spiritual beliefs as well, like there are like things that can help you heal, and a lot of times they're tied to maybe like rocks or crystals or things of that nature. So like within like your healing practice and your business and stuff, how does that work? Do you, when you're trying to heal someone, do you have things that you use? Is it more like psychology based stuff, or like if someone was listening right now and they had kind of a traumatic moment, whatever it may be, and you're trying to offer them some kind of help, what does that like process look like?
Okay, there's a lot there. So what I do in my working is very different from other, you see, like now they have a lot of spiritual coaches.
And it's like everyone's unique. So, and that's why like I want to, I want to hear it from you, because, it's just like almost when people say like, oh, I don't like people that listen to rap. Like, what do you mean by that? Right. Like, are you trying to hate on like what you assume is the target demographic, or is like, because everyone to a degree, I listen to rap, like, so what do you mean by that? It's the same when people say like, I'm a spiritual coach. Like, what do you mean by that?
Like what kind?
Yeah.
My approach is really different with each person. I've studied a lot on psychology just from really being like a people observer. I might be slightly autistic, but I don't know. So I've always observed people. I've had my fair share of trauma, so that too. And I'm kind of like hypersensitive to not only energies, but just very aware of people and where their trauma is coming from.
Right.
So part of my spiritual gifts is that, like, targeting their trauma, and not just from observing from physical body language, but just listening to them. But also I do other spiritual practices that can aid to that. So I've done reiki, and I also can deeply meditate enough to figure out really exactly what happened to some of these people.
That's very cool. Now I'm going to ask you a question, because there's a lot of beginners. I do study. I like to study a little bit about different practices and stuff, but like I don't really have a solid understanding. For those listeners that are also in my boat, like, what is Reiki? What is that?
Reiki is super controversial.
Yes, more controversy. I love it.
Reiki is healing of the hands. It's energy work. It's not your own energy. So if you were to learn how to do Reiki, it's not you doing the healing. It's the Reiki itself, and that's just energy coming from source.
Okay,
so
cool.
The way I was certified was really special. Now there's some people who do it and I don't know, they do it online. I don't believe in that. And the way I was taught is that you have to be certified by somebody who is really legit. It's kind of like shamanism.
Right, yeah.
So there's this whole process.
There's a transfer of, knowledge and energy. Yeah, you got to feel it, right?
Yeah.
I was never a fan of this whole online church thing. Just to put it aside there. Too. When that thing happened, I was like, listen, I would rather pray under a rock.
It's not giving spiritual
to get more spiritual knowledge, because that's how the OGs did it back in the day. But I'm not going to, go here and join the Zoom. Hey guys, give me a thumbs up if you like that sermon.
Right.
That's so not to hate on y'all that did it. Hey, you know what? I love y'all, but
I like
just not for me.
The E for effort though, because it's when you're busy, it's cool. If you are religious and you're oh, let me just put this on my phone so I can listen to what they have to say.
Right.
But I don't think it's the same.
Especially when you're certifying yourself to help others. It's not like you're just listening to listen.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. Yeah.
So Reiki, you also use crystals. You can use other things. Really, when you go through the whole process of getting initiated into it or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Initiated sounds cool. Yeah, we'll stick with that.
Initiated. There's a whole. Most of it I can't really talk about because that's how I was taught.
Yeah.
But there's different things you can add into it based off of the person and what you feel they need. So, for example, let's just say I feel you need grass or that you connect with grass to calm yourself. I could go pull grass or I could imagine grass. And that would help aid into, balancing you out. And Reiki doesn't just clear you of all your problems either. It's
of course,
good for, muscle pain. There are people who do Reiki really, really well. I know somebody out here in Vegas that does it, and she's able to do a lot more than just heal a little bit of back pain. So
cool.
I think it depends on the level of skill and how much practice and passion you have towards it.
I'm envisioning some really cool Doctor Strange visuals. I know that's probably not how it works, but that seems really cool. So if you guys are enjoying what you're hearing right now, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be right back. We're going to do a brief commercial break. Welcome back. Thanks for sticking with us. So last off, we were talking about Reiki. We were talking about kind of, your healing process as a whole. So yeah, let's continue the conversation.
Yeah, so I have a lot of knowledge on psychology.
Superpowers. I'm just kidding.
Superpowers, yeah. Whatever you guys want to call it. I don't like to give myself that much credit because I feel, actually I could mention that. So when I got sick, when I got the endocarditis, I swear I died.
Really?
I swear I died.
Oh, this is good stuff.
I asked.
Not you almost dying, but me listening to this, this sounds like an awesome story. So thank you for sharing, your personal experience.
I had asked nurses there. I had at the time got my insurance revoked. So I kind of felt neglected in the hospital.
Yeah.
And I felt like I died. I didn't get checked on very much. And that was very different because usually I've had insurance. Sort of like that. And I just remember not being here. And I could hear, but it was faint. It was really, really far away. And some people told me oh, you were probably really drugged up. But I don't think that was the case. Because when I came back out of the hospital and back into my normal life, whatever, everything was very different. I was different.
Really?
Yeah. So, and I mean different in other multiple ways. I noticed that I was able to heal people with my hands without Reiki. I did Reiki a year after. And I don't like to give myself full credit because I feel if I did die in that time, that I kind of made a deal with God that I would come back better and I would do something better.
I love
before that I was fucking up.
Yeah.
Totally.
Hey, everyone has, we're developing creatures, we're adults, right? But at the same time, we're also babies in this whole existence and all this.
An adult baby.
Yeah. Adult babies for life. Awesome. But it's important to embrace that, right? Because as we're kids, we're always learning. If we think we're like this like super sage person, I've already learned everything, I've
Right.
unlocked
That
everything. It's
ego.
like, I hate the ego stuff.
Yeah. The ego will ruin you. Literally. That's
So
yeah.
if you're a listener right now, you need a reality check. Yeah, get a reality check. Get rid of your ego.
Try your best. Do your best. Yeah, that's really, I'm an experience. That's it. Like, it's not something I really know how to explain. I try
Right.
my best, but every time somebody asks me the same kind of similar question, it's different each person that I deal with, and it's just more like I know how to change your life, either your mindset or your literal life.
Right. And
So,
I find that, so like, let me ask you this, like, do people have to actually want it for it to work? Because I know it's like, it's almost like an idea, right? It's like, hey, I want to be healed, right?
right.
I will it so, or I want it to be so. But like, if there's someone that goes to you like begrudgingly, and it's like, oh, like my sister told me I should come here,
Yeah.
like, like I assume that having them will it
Uh,
matters, right? Or
Yeah, well, when people come around me in that sense, because I learned the hard way in the beginning when I was experimenting with myself, my gifts.
yeah,
I kind of put out a little too much on people
hmm.
without them wanting all of that. And
Interesting,
that was kind of my flaw because just offering way too much help for no reason because some
right,
people don't want to be helped.
right,
But what I found is that that was working for me because the more I made people feel uncomfortable in their own skin,
yeah.
the faster they healed because it's almost like nobody, like they're surrounded by yes people.
Right, yeah. Everyone wants to be PC. Everyone wants to be like, oh yeah, it's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah.
Everyone wants to avoid
They're
conflict.
doing
Yeah,
fine. Nothing
right.
is wrong. Oh, that wasn't bad, even though they're like, no,
Yeah,
that was
everyone's,
bad.
having this whole like, yes, girl mentality doesn't
Yeah,
really work all the time because sometimes you need to be told no. You need to be
no, this
told,
is
hey,
right.
you know what?
And
Let's get you on a better path. Not that you're like, you know every path, but it's more like, hey, you know what? I think you could be a little better. Yeah,
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 I'm a little brutal with it though.
yeah.
I don't really like to work with people fresh out of trauma
Hmm.
because I do feel like those people need to talk it out. And I'm not fully against therapy, but I
Yeah,
don't think therapy is a cure. I think
right.
therapy helps for the first step,
Yeah,
and then I would be the second. And
totally.
when it comes to like life coaching, they go hand in hand. That's kind of how I was trained.
Yeah.
Like you want to encourage your client to get a therapist because we really would work well together if therapists thought that life coaches were just as useful.
Yeah,
So
really. Yeah, I know. It's like this idea of like, yeah, you should probably appreciate, something that goes hand in line with what you're doing,
right.
as opposed to like, oh,
Well,
I
they're
don't
not taught
believe
that
in
way.
that. Yeah,
They're taught,
exactly. It's how they're
you
taught.
went to school, you did all this work,
Yeah,
and you can do it all by yourself.
I think that's really interesting. So, like, talk to me about, because I know everyone's unique. Do you have like a certain experience that you had with someone that was like your favorite or your worst, your choice? But yeah, tell us a little bit about, without getting too in depth about them, like about a case that you had and how that was.
My favorite, my favorite experience. Well, as far as life coaching or just spiritually, or what do you mean?
I would say both. Yeah, out of like your whole like profession as a whole, life coaching or spiritual healing, is there a story that like really stuck out to you and it was like, you know what, this is why I enjoy doing what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I felt that this was like a really awesome event that happened.
Um, there's been a few. I don't know. I don't want to say favorite.
Oh,
I would say least favorite, only because a lot of people that I have worked with, it's it's similar with anything. You know, you try your best to like help certain people, but not everybody is ready,
right.
and that's what's happened a lot. I wouldn't like pinpoint certain people, but a few individuals I have tried to help push in the right direction, and in that moment in time, they did not want it.
Hmm.
They were rejecting it, like you said, like
Yeah.
almost resentful of the help. And eventually, I just disconnect myself completely because I don't offer energy when it's not receptive.
Right.
And
Do you feel like it's like a drain in a way? Like I know that there's like this concept of right, like someone being like an energy
yes,
vampire or something like that. So yeah, so
yes,
you kind of follow that too.
energy can be drained from you, especially if you're very in tune. You would just be tired all the time. And
Yeah.
I was tired all the time, exhausted. So
Exhausting work though, right? Well, I think it's
yeah,
really awesome because like that is almost like an additional testament to what you do. It's like, hey, work, at least the way we understand like physics or whatever. I don't know. I'm not a physics
Work
person,
is
but like,
energy.
right, work is energy, right?
Yeah.
You just can't have energy just exist out of nothing. It's created through work. And so the work that you're doing, it may be invisible to our, spectral or eyes,
See,
but yeah.
that word invisible is like super important because most of what I do is invisible.
Right.
You can't see it. I don't have tinkers and tools, and I
Yeah.
don't use the sound bowls and all that. There are
Okay.
people who do all
Right,
that, which is
yeah.
great.
Okay.
But I don't do any of that.
Which I think is important for people to understand because sometimes that's the only thing they associate it with.
With spirituality, too.
And I feel that maybe it gives them like a gimmicky kind of view or something, right? It's almost like your modern day, Christian or whatever. It's like, oh, I have to have a Bible in my hand or whatever. It's like, no, you don't.
Again,
actually.
With the objects.
You don't need to have a cross. Like, it's cool. And I feel like you can feed energy into something, right? Like, if I give energy into, I don't know, if I give energy into my phone and it's negative energy, guess what? This is a negative device,
and it'll bounce to you.
If I give faith and devotion to a cross, sure, maybe now it's a sacred object to you and you can utilize that in some kind of way. But it's just a mechanism. Like you said, it's an object. Yeah.
Yeah, when we come to like almost like worshiping things and objects, I would say worshiping physical things, even people.
Yeah.
Like valuing people more than you do yourself.
Ooh, that's like, a tough one. That's a ritual. Yeah. Because people are always like, hey, you know what? I put my kids before anything else. I'm like, you know what? Yeah, you can love your kids. And I can't speak to in the same way that you can because I'm not a dad, but I am a son, And so the way I understand things, like, yeah, like I want to value my parents.
Right.
And I want them to value me. But we're two separate entities now. We're two separate beings, and like
we're always two separate beings.
Yeah, exactly.
From the moment,
for sure.
Literally, from the moment you were conceived inside the womb, you were always separate. Your mom just was that incubator, kind of.
Right, exactly. So it's like I would want her put herself first, and I would want to put myself first. Not that I'm like selfish in a way, but it's like, hey, in order for me to be the best child or like to help us both progress, I can't just be giving all my life energy to you. It's like,
yeah, parents. It's hard because when we come in as a child, we don't realize that we're really the lesson for our parents, and vice versa. It just trickles down. It's kind of what children are for, to teach the parents something. The problem is when the parents don't acknowledge the lesson that they're supposed to learn, and then we grow up as
narcissistic
adults.
Parents.
Well, not always. I know people like to throw narcissism out. Not everybody's narcissistic. It's way more popular now because of the vanity in the world. But I think that just stems from needing attention and certain levels of dopamine that we're just not getting because of technology. Oh, that's
interesting. Yeah. I'm so glad you mentioned that because I feel that
we talked about
a digital detox, as we were talking about before the show, it's like, I manage and I have so many different freaking devices, but like I need to have a detox. Yeah. And I feel like people need to have a digital detox, even if you're out of tech. If you just simply use your phone all the time, have a digital detox.
You literally need to get away. Like, if you live in a city, get away from the city for, like, just 2 days. Go connect with, like, trees, water.
Get grounded and stuff. I think that works, too.
And it's all, like, not a hoax at all. Like, just try it and what you'll see. It just changes you a little bit. Just a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I feel like when I started off being an entrepreneur and stuff, I was totally, like I always had an adoration for nature. Like, I was like in Boy Scouts and stuff, and I love to be out and stuff. But I feel like a lot of times when we feel that like real world hits us, which I don't like seeing it that way, but work, we get lost in work so deep into it that like we lose track of the things that we used to love, like nature and all this stuff. Yeah. And I had a heart issue because of that early in my entrepreneurial journey. Like literally my heart swelled up, and they didn't really have like medical like explanation for it other than maybe you're just too stressed. You know what? And I'll take that for what it is. Yeah, probably was too stressed, but I also wasn't getting my daily dose of like good activators. Yeah, I wasn't getting like sunlight because I was inside all the time. I wasn't, like interacting with people, having a social life because I was just lost in technology.
The sun is super important. There's a book, I cannot think of the name right now though, but there is a book that I was reading, and it talks a lot about the sun and how a lot of things could be cured if we just went out in the sun.
Wasn't it? It's so funny that you mentioned that because like I feel like people see the sun as their enemy now, because in like in
sun.
beauty trends and all this stuff nowadays, right? It's like, be away from the sun, be covered like nonstop in like sunscreen. And like, dude, I understand if you're like in freaking Antarctica and like the UV layer is like super thin, but like in your normal day life, you're just gonna avoid the sun 24/7. I don't understand.
So there's unhealthy amounts of sun
Oh, for
in
sure,
direct
yeah.
contact at its full capacity, and then there's healthy amount of sun, and you're supposed to get it when it's obviously not like we know we're in Vegas. It's always hot, but we wouldn't go out in, let's just say, like 10 and 11 a.m. throughout till probably around now.
Yeah.
It's too sunny. It's too hot.
You know what? I had a friend talk to me about this, and like, yeah. Okay, so because he was in Arizona, and so like obviously his time for the sun maybe is a little bit different from ours, but like, do you have it? What is like our ideal time that we should be on the sun as Las Vegas people?
Before its peak, so like sunset time.
Okay.
Like right before that.
Yeah.
For maybe like an hour or 2 hours, and then same with sunrise. It's super important. It goes back to like Egyptian knowledge and things like that. But the sun, if you get it at a good contact, it creates melanin in us melanated and non-melanated people.
Yeah.
And melanated people don't need to be scared of the sun at all. Like your skin pigment literally protects
it can
you
handle
from the sun.
more absorption, right? Yeah. Which is awesome. Yeah, and you know what? Thank you for validating my perfect time to go out, which is literally like a couple hours before sunset. Yeah. That's awesome.
We do it subconsciously. I cannot think of the right word right now. I'm not obviously prepared, but there is a term for it, and it's kind of goes back to when we were Homo sapiens.
Yeah.
So we naturally knew when to go out.
We were star children. I'm just kidding.
Back when we were,
Yeah.
Yeah,
No. Do your thing. I'm just messing with people. Listen, I don't care if you believe in evolution or not or whatever. But yeah, I understand. Yeah, it's early in our traits as like human beings.
Right.
Like, yeah, we like sometimes we like inherently know things.
Yeah.
So like just like inherently, a mom. Typically 99.9 cents out of time, like percent of the time, like when you give birth to your child, you automatically feel love for your child.
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
As a DNA transfer.
Yeah. There's this other thing I want to talk about too. Oh yeah. So like, when you talk about like, healing and working on your clients, like, does the energy feel a little different, or how does it work with like females and like men? Like it. I guess, just like addressing the concept overall, like.
So I have a much harder time healing women.
Okay.
But also I go for really traumatized people.
Okay.
Just naturally.
Which are just hard to begin with. Hey, it's hard to heal anyone that's,
Yeah, but I feel if we focus on them, then we could fix a lot in the world, because most of what's wrong in the world is just a lot of unhealed, traumatic people.
And that spreads more than, like, the craziest virus that you can think of. It's just, like,
Yeah, we poison people when we're not healed. It's the same way, like you said, good people and good energy goes back. It's the same way. So I focus on, like, the most traumatized people, but not right when the trauma happens.
Right.
And I've noticed that it's so much harder with women as a woman, because there's like, I don't know if it's society now and just the time that we're in, but women, and also not both, attractive, most women get intimidated by that. So they're like, oh, she's probably mean, probably judgmental. It's all these statistics and all these just ideas that they have in their head about who I am, not knowing that, like, okay, this has happened to me though. So it's funny that you're nervous about talking to me about it when it's happened to me already. Like most things that have happened to a lot of the people I work with, it's already happened, and I've already kind of worked through it. So I can relate to them. I'm able to just help them go through the whole process a lot easier. With men, it's so much easier, and I feel it's because, like, I was talking about this the other day too, the feminine energy can heal masculine energy. Yeah. Way more than the feminine can heal feminine. I think a feminine energy a true, like, divine feminine energy can heal a non-divine feminine, just because we could teach them how to love themselves and how to, like, gain strength within themselves. Yeah. But I don't think I could, like, truly, really heal any woman at all by myself. I think that's what men do. And this whole ideal around men being, like, toxic and men are bad for us. I don't agree with that. I agree with most of these women have been traumatized by a lot of men. That's
AKA, they're super toxic guys. Guess what? They're super toxic gals. But, like, there's also extremely well-divined men and divine women.
Oh, yeah.
And if we acknowledge that, you know, and, like, not be like, yo, I hate y'all or whatever, like, we can't, we have to coexist.
We're hiding from each other.
Yeah.
The divine energies that are out there that are actually healed and working well and, like, they have good intentions towards people.
Yeah.
The traumatized people naturally will run from that kind of energy
because
it's not familiar.
It's not familiar, but it's also a sense of like intimidation as well too.
Yeah, and it's like as somebody who's been traumatized by men, I'm like, it's probably too good to be true. You know, it's probably a form of manipulation. Is how it usually starts.
Ooh,
so you have to really just put trust and also be one within your intuition and be able to decipher, okay, is this person manipulating? Like, you have to really tap in with your senses, because if you don't know yourself, you can't know somebody else.
Right. If you don't know what anger feels like to you, or like you acknowledge it, what it means to you, how do you know that's what the other person is feeling? And I think like having like a sense of like discernment is important, but not because like you want to be like a living lie detector. Like I don't think it necessarily works that way. Like, yeah, I'm sure people lie to me all the time, and I'm like, sure, I totally thought they were saying the truth, but it's about like just being able to discern like the energy itself.
Yeah,
you know?
Being familiar with energy is good. But some people are really, really good at deterring their energy.
You know what? I think it's because like, you know, and I believe that there is like some division, right, of like, you know, absolute good and absolute evil, and I feel that people, you know, you can practice and be part of one camp or the other, you know, in the same way. Like, yeah, most people agree on and acknowledge that if someone wears a dark robe and is seen with a dagger and like hiding dead bodies, yeah, that's like some Satanist weirdo or whatever, and they're killing people. Like, but like it's harder to tell when someone does the equivalent, but like the emotional equivalent, you know? Yeah, you may not be murdering people, but the way that you treat people is like you're killing their soul in a way, you know? There's a lot of toxic people out there, and it's hard to tell because like they train for that.
Oh yeah.
You know, in the same way that like people train for like things like you do, you know, they train spiritually to be able to heal people. There are people out there in this world that train specifically to harm as many people as they can.
You know what? Since you're talking about that, I will bring up a interesting experience that had happened, and there was somebody I never met them physically.
Okay.
It was all social media based.
Okay.
And they tried to essentially coerce me into like a cult.
Into
building a cult. Not just a cult, just building it.
Okay.
Like being a cult
Charles
leader.
Mariah Mansion. I can see it right now. Totally.
I would
sign me up real quick.
But they studied astrology.
Okay.
And not just any astrology, a birth chart astrology.
Right. So like, down to the moment that you're born time, and all these specific
all
stuff.
Those details.
That's why, just heads up, I really don't ever disclose that. Like, yeah, I may give you my birth month and day, but I won't. A lot of times give you the year. A lot of times I won't give you like the time of birth.
They need the time.
Sure. Yeah.
Without the time, it doesn't matter. They can try to get as much as they can, but the time is really what changes it. I had him read my chart, and I noticed, I'm just really intuitive, so I noticed after that he tried manipulating me through the knowledge he got from that.
Ooh, interesting.
I'm like, it's funny because that won't work on me, but it's concerning because it will work on a lot of people, and that's how cults start.
Right.
They get information like a Scientology.
Scientology, Sorry, listen. If y'all are Scientologists and you're listening right now...
They are not.
Yeah, I know they're not listening because they're too busy paying out money to the
I don't think they're allowed to.
Yeah.
I think there's rules. I don't think they're allowed to go on social media.
Oh, really?
I don't know.
I don't know. Weird stuff. But anyways, listen, I think there's a fine line of understanding. I disagree with their views, and if you're listening, sorry, that's just the way I feel. But like, explain to me in the comments why your belief is the way it is, and I don't know, maybe I'll be changed. But as far as this show, sorry, we don't agree with Scientology. Get over it.
I don't agree with it's cult like, really. Yeah. It's the way that they get them in. It's kind of similar to MLMs.
Yeah.
Which I was in a lot of MLMs.
I fell into that once too, yeah.
Some of those MLMs were way culty, though. Like, there was...
Okay, then we got to do a part 2. This is another podcast. Yeah. We're going to talk all about MLMs.
Yeah. Because there was cults. There was definitely cults in them.
Yeah, for
sure. Like, whole side businesses for that.
Yeah. You know what? It's funny because like the way the movement of MLMs is going now, it targets a lot of single women.
Single moms.
Yeah, single moms.
People
Yeah.
in poverty.
Yeah.
Struggling. Just individuals that need family, kind of similar to the sex worker industry and gangs.
Oh wow, that's an interesting analogy.
Like,
yeah.
Start. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, beware of the cults.
Beware of the cults.
Just study cult, like kind of cult knowledge, like how people start cults, and then just be aware of those signs.
I absorb that stuff all the time, and I listen to like a whole bunch of like esoteric and occult kind of stuff, and like people in the mainstream of like religion and stuff. They're like, oh, why you listen to that stuff? Do you worship that stuff? No, I don't. But I want to be able to understand and be aware of what is being put in front of me and what people's intentions are.
And that's another thing I don't like about religion, that restriction of knowledge outside of religion. Yeah. It's kind of scary because the reality is we live in a world where people do a lot of shit. Like, whatever they want, really. Yeah. So if you're not knowledgeable on it, you're kind of like risking the chance of getting involved in a bunch of things just from being so naive.
And this whole concept, I mean, even to begin with, right? Like, okay, you worship a superior being, you worship a god. Well, God knows everything. So if your entire purpose is to try to strive to become similar to the being that you're worshiping, or in some cases, unison with that being, like, wouldn't you theoretically absorb all the knowledge anyway? So why is it like, oh, I can't know this? Well, what do you mean you can't know this? What do you mean you can't read this book? It's just so stupid to me.
I feel that started from people who were able to know more. Because when you really get deep into it...
Some gatekeepers out there.
Yeah, well, but there's some people who got deep into it and they went down the wrong path. Like, especially people who, like, get into Wicca. I've learned about Wicca, I've done Wicca. But there's two different ways of it. And if you kind of spiral and you want to just gain like power and control, well, now you've seen a whole other side of spirituality, and some people cannot handle it. They'll really go crazy, be in different levels of like psychosis. You see people go into mental hospitals, and it's because they can't handle the things that they learned. Wow. But not everybody is strong enough. That's why you need to do it slowly. Right. Just jump right into it.
Exactly. Yeah. And I feel like, other topics. Okay, we're going down. But yeah, I definitely, I want to have a Wicca episode too, maybe. I don't know. But okay, this has been really awesome. I think we've teased the audience with a little bit so they can know, a little bit about you and how awesome you are. So I definitely want to have you back on. If someone is listening right now and they want to get in touch, maybe they don't necessarily know that they're traumatized, or maybe they are. Maybe they are very much aware of their situation and they want to get some help. I mean, how would they go about that?
So I have an Instagram that I post a lot of like holistic knowledge. I really just share my experience in life, and it's not for the weak. So if you're really judgmental, just beware because I post everything.
Yeah, cry about it.
Yeah, cry about it.
Literally, sometimes it's good. Like, cry it out.
And for one-on-one coaching, you can find the link in the bio, or just go to inspiratuscoaching.com. The W in front, or it won't work.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thank y'all for listening. This has been Midnight Musings Podcast. Stick around for the next episode.